Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of A Dose of Sass. Today we are in part 3 and probably the last part of my little series on internet body content. And today we're going to get into the actual thing that inspired me to do this series, but I felt like I had to do part 1 and 2 to kind of set the scene, set the context. In case you missed it, go back and listen to those two because they're important, foundation for today's conversation. Part 1, just a small recap. Part 1 is about body positivity asterisks, the internet movement. And part 2 is a little bit more of an exploration of some other niches under internet body content, recovery content, mommy blogger content, content that kind of has an underlying message of I'm fat because. And the bottom line message of part 2's episode was it's okay to be fat, period. You don't need a qualifier. You don't need to justify your body on the internet. And we're going to dive into that a little bit more in today's episode. And I'm I'm a little bit nervous because I've had this conversation with a couple of my friends, but I haven't actually talked about this online yet. And I know that I'm not alone, but because I feel like I'm opening the door of this conversation, I'm a little bit nervous about how it's going to be perceived. So, bear with me. Today, I want to dive a little bit more into this justifying your body on the internet, specifically in the kind of crossover of plus size fashion, mommy blogger, body positivity realm. So, where do I start? The internet, I'm like, how do I phrase this? The internet is a weird place in which we know that extreme body content performs well. Now, well is a relative term because it often can mean a massive amount of haters. It can also mean a massive amount of relatability, but ultimately often results in virality because any kind of body comparison or body content that you don't usually see on the internet is going to catch people's attention, catch people's eyes, whether they appreciate it or not. So that's why things like side by side self-love content does well. That's why things like fat people loving their bodies and posting pictures in bikinis does well because people have opinions on that for better or worse. And I've talked in part 1 and 2 about whether or not that kind of content is helpful. And I'm not going to rehash that in today's episode, but I do want to lean into another kind of thing that happens when you build a platform that is body focused, if you will, that you're talking about your body, showing outfits on your body, something about your body is like the main pillar of your content. It creates this kind of environment of body monitorization where your audience who has followed you for the fact that they either look like you or they appreciate the message that they're sharing or they relate to your body content in some way is now looking at you very closely. And I don't know that that's necessarily a good thing. I wish bottom line that I didn't even have to make a 3-part series on internet body content, that we could all just mind our business and leave it alone. But here we are. If you have an audience on the internet that has followed you for something related to your body, they are now watching you under a microscope. And in 2024, when we've seen an increase in formerly body confident or body positive plus size creators announcing their weight loss journeys, we have seen this reaction of, wait, I thought I followed you for one thing and now you're doing something else. And me, the audience member, feels betrayed in some way. And there's validity to that for sure. I made a whole episode about it. And if you feel bamboozled by a former favorite creator who is now seemingly doing the opposite of what you followed them for, it's understandable to feel a certain way about that. Go listen to my episode on so your favorite body positive creator announced their weight loss journey, because those feelings are absolutely valid. But on the other hand, I sympathize as someone who has a platform that creates body content, quote unquote. There's this weird hey, remember I'm a person and I'm allowed to do what I want and I don't owe the internet an explanation. It's a weird double-edged sword because on one hand, yes, you do because you built this platform and you probably should tell them what's going on. But on the other hand, there are some things that you're allowed to keep to yourself, your health being one of them, your weight being one of them. And everyone's entitled to make an individual decision about that. But it goes back and forth of, How much responsibility do you have to your audience to explain body changes? And aside from people announcing intentional weight loss journeys, there's also people whose bodies change for other reasons unintentionally. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I'm just gonna give my explanation here. There are creators who I have unfollowed once they become a mom or once they get pregnant, because then suddenly all of their content changes from what I was previously following them for to motherhood content. And since I'm not a mom right now, that's just not a life stage that I can relate to, or the kind of content I'm really looking for right now. And so as a follower, it's time for me to move on. And I think that's totally fine. They're probably going to find all sorts of new people who are in the same life stage as them and grateful for that kind of content. That's not where I'm at right now. And so the same thing happens with creators who either lose weight or gain weight. They're going to lose or gain parts of their audience. And that's totally normal. Where it gets a little tricky is when they feel the need to be super defensive to their audience about those changes. I'm not going to say that there's one right way to do this, because on one hand, I agree with the fact that you shouldn't have to defend the size of your body on the internet. But if it's something you're getting questions about, you have a responsibility to your audience to answer them. But it's maybe not something you need to talk about all the time. Maybe it's something you address one time and you pin a post, or you add it to a highlight or something, or you have a standard response when somebody asks you a question of, hey, I've noticed you've changed sizes recently. What's going on? On the other end of that, let's not comment on people's bodies. See how this is a really weird double-edged conversation. And that's why I needed to have two whole parts to this prior, because I'm like, we're jumping into the weeds here and things are getting a little sticky. What I want to get to in this episode is I'm not really concerned with why someone's body changes, because that's between you and yourself. But I am concerned with how it's addressed to the world, or not addressed. One thing that's important to me is that people remain truthful. So if their size does happen to change, whether it's through intentional weight loss or unintentional weight loss or any reason whatsoever, be real about it, And actually, I do appreciate, as someone who finds people pursuing weight loss in 2024 a little bit of a triggering experience, I do appreciate when someone comes out and says, hey, this wasn't intentional. Or there are a few creators that come to mind who have really struggled with their mental health, and as a result have been going to the gym more often or running or doing some kind of physical activity that has resulted in weight loss, but they're very upfront and they talk about all the time how this has been for their mental health. And that is like clear in their content. However, and here's where we're going to get a little bit spicy. The matter of fact is they have lost weight and they are now in a smaller size than they were before. And as a plus size fashion girly, I like to think that I've expanded beyond fashion these days, and I talk a lot more about more encompassing things: body image, healing your relationship with food and body, fitness, etc. But I do still talk about fashion. And as a plus size fashion girly, there is this really weird kind of pressure to maintain my body size. One, because I've built an audience around it, and there's a fear that, if I change sizes, I'm going to lose my audience, or I won't find the people that now are the size that I am. And two, that I'll be accused of doing it for the wrong reasons. That's a real pressure that I feel as a creator, as a plus size creator on the internet. And I think a lot of us feel this way. And I don't know if that's really like a healthy thing that's happening on the internet, but it is a real pressure that I feel. And so I get why some people maybe don't address it, because they are afraid that people just aren't going to get it. Or at worst, they're going to hate and unfollow them for it. But I want to talk about these creators who have built a platform around plus size fashion, around representing a certain size, and for whatever reason, intentional or not, are now in a smaller size. And some might say not totally plus size. There's always the debate of where does the mid-size versus plus size line start. But I've noticed a trend that once these creators kind of hit the 10 to 14 size range, a couple of things happen. One, there are new brands opened up to them that they may have not been able to previously shop at before. And so they're doing hauls from new brands, but not actually inclusive plus size brands. However, they're still promoting to their audience, hey, I'm representing the plus size fashion girlies, but doing try-ons and hauls from non-plus size brands. I don't want to sound like a hypocrite here because yes, I often buy things from Amazon that stop at my size or don't carry large plus sizes. And I'm in this weird, I'm all kind of in this weird range of I can shop at Target and maybe wear an XL, XXL, but I also shop plus size. And some things I fit and some things I don't. And I feel really bad when I share an Amazon item that stops at size XL and I happen to fit it, but I know that there's a good chunk of my audience that won't. And I do genuinely feel bad when that happens. But on the other hand, like I'm shopping for me and like if it fits me and I think it's cute, I'm gonna keep it. But like I'm also an influencer and I have this responsibility to share more inclusive things, but also like I'm still a person. Really, really muddy conversation we're having here today. And so I get like if you are now in a smaller size and able to shop at places you weren't before, that could be so exciting. You want to see what all the hype's about. I get that. But also, maybe it's time to not really align yourself with the plus size community anymore. Maybe we land in the mid-size space. Maybe we just don't put a label on it at all. Maybe we just stick with your size. Representing the size 10 girlies, whatever you want to call that for yourself. I know some plus size brands start at size 10, size 12, and some don't. Like it's a weird place to be. I understand. But I do think it's a little bit alienating and frustrating for your audience if, yes, maybe you're not on an intentional weight loss journey, but you're starting to promote non-inclusive brands, shopping smaller. It just feels a little bit weird. I feel a little bit weird about it. And I have a feeling I'm not alone. Another thing at the same time that's happening, not only are they getting smaller and shopping smaller size range brands, but then there's like this emphasis on what feels like proving that your body is still plus size. And what I notice, why I said this is kind of the mommy blogger, body positive, fashion girly corner of the internet, this crossover territory, because I noticed that a lot of these creators have a belly as a result of having kids. And so now they're in this like new normal body, if you will, and they're trying to find their confidence again, trying to find their passion again. Absolutely props to you. Go for it. That is a big life change, and everyone deserves to feel confident no matter what. But like I said in part 2, there's a little bit of a funky feeling around this like you're fat because content. And what about the people who are fat, period? Like, yes, there is relatability to I have an apron belly or a soft belly because I carried babies. But what about the people who have an apron belly or a soft belly because? And are we actually okay with having an apron belly, period? Or are we only okay with having an apron belly because you have kids to show for it? Is there this constant need to justify? That's where, like, those are just the questions that I'm asking myself, that I want you to ask yourself when you consume this kind of content. I'm just giving you a little bit more nuance to add to the conversation, to not take things for face value. Because this is something that I've been kind of exploring in my own feed of going, something is feeling a little bit off about this. What is that? Let me talk about it on the podcast. So, like I said, there's this kind of what's feeling like a desire to prove their existence in the plus size community. So, a lot of their videos now include these almost clickbaity jump scare kind of intros where they're showing their leggings rolled down with their jiggly belly, or they're showing their saggy boobs or their wiggly arms. And all of those things are okay. And I had to check myself first when I first started to feel weird about this kind of content to go, is this my internalized fat phobia? Do I just feel weird about them showing their stomach because I'm not comfortable with my stomach? Like, is that the thing that's happening? Okay, no, I'm actually fine with their stomach. It's something else. Let me try to figure that out. And on one hand, again, extreme, almost clickbaity body content is going to perform on the internet well. I've done a series where I said, is it a cute pose or is she just skinny? And I kept that title, even though it sounds a little bit controversial, because it's the internet. And I'm looking for the engagement. I'm looking for the people to stop and go, wait a second. And so if that's the intention with starting your video with your leggings rolled down and your belly out to stop the scroll, I get that. I'm a creator. I know how the internet works. But this other thing happens where they go from showing, okay, here's my leggings rolled down on my belly. Let me pull up my leggings. Let me pull up my undies, smooth everything down, put my real bra on, and put on my cutie little outfit. And you wouldn't even know that I had all this underneath. They're not necessarily like visibly plus size. A little bit curvy, yeah. But it's almost what it kind of feels like a magic trick. And that sounds so weird, but to go like, look, all of this jiggly goodness can be wrapped up in a cute little bow, and you'd never know it was even there. I noticed that they often wear shapewear, which take it or leave it, do what you want with that. I've talked about shapewear in another episode. It's not personally for me, but it's starting to feel, unfortunately, because I'm seeing an uptick in this kind of content. It's like every single video starts with this. It's not just a one-time, hey, I'm going to show you my belly to remind you that bellies are fine. It's every single video, whether or not like that really has anything to do with the topic at hand. I start my videos in my bra and underwear sometimes, but I'm just existing. I'm just standing there. I'm not rolling down my undies to show extra stomach. I'm not bending over to add extra rolls. I'm not wiggling myself in some way to prove that I have jiggly bits. Like, I'm just standing there and like I'll show an outfit unposed at all angles, but I'm just standing there. I'm not posing in a way to emphasize something about my body that I should maybe be insecure about. And that's where it starts to kind of blur the lines between the thin girls who roll down their leggings and pretend to have rolls for social media content and the plus size girlies who roll down their leggings and have a little bit more rolls to make social media content. Do you see where I'm going with this? I'm starting to feel like these types of content kind of feel the same. They kind of feel like body checking in a sense. If I made a big deal about the fact that thin women make content going, I look like this 1% of the time and this 1% of the time, then it's starting to kind of feel the same even when a curvy girl says, this is me 1% of the time and this is me another 1% of the time. It's no longer feeling like empowering and relatable. It's starting to feel a little bit, I don't know what to call it, a little bit slimy, a little bit clickbaity. I don't know. It's starting to feel weird. And I hate to say that because I am a person in this corner of the internet. And I don't want to come out here and hate on any specific creators who are doing this, but I just want to share like how it's making me feel because I have a feeling that I'm not alone. I'm starting to get really bothered by overemphasizing body features for like social media clout almost. Like that sounds really bad, but and especially because it's coming from people who are in smaller bodies than before. It's starting to feel like, hey, don't worry, I still have a belly. Don't forget about that. I'm still not a straight size. I still can't shop everywhere. A lot of places, more places now, but not everywhere. I'm still a minority, if you will. I'm still a specialty. And I'll prove it by showing you the parts of my body that the internet doesn't love to see to prove that I'm still allowed to be in this space. And I'm kind of falling in the category of if you're no longer in plus sizes, you don't need to pretend like you are. This is why I was nervous for this episode. And again, I don't want this episode to sound like I am hating on creators for their bodies changing or I'm calling out anybody specifically. I'm not. This is a weird gray area of what level of responsibility do you have to your audience? And no, you don't need to justify it, but also you did create an audience that's going to want to know. And as someone in the anti-diet space, I'm curious to know if this was intentional or not. And because here's the thing, when no matter why your body is changing, there's still going to be a subconscious message to me that maybe my body should change. Am I supposed to be getting smaller? I've been going to the gym, but I'm not losing weight. Is there something different I should be doing? And wait a second, that's not what it's about. But like, that's where my brain still goes. And why is there this need to justify your body on the internet and prove that you belong in a certain space? And why do we have to have certain spaces at all? And Why are we even commenting on people's bodies? And why do people have to monitor the size of my body just because I'm a creator on the internet? And it's just, I'm sorry, this is such a messy episode, but like, that's everything that's happening up in here. There's no like right and wrong answer to this. It's just back and forth of, well, this and then this. And then, well, and a lot of this has to do with my personal feelings on the matter. There's a personal bias here. You might not feel a certain way about it at all. And if so, that's great. But that's kind of where I'm at. I'm starting to feel weird about plus size fashion creators starting every video with a belly shot because to me, it's starting to feel a little bit like, how is that any different from a thin person starting their what I eat in a day with a belly shot? It's still using your body as the justifier for your content. So that's kind of it of this conversation. I would love to know your thoughts on this. I'd love to talk about this more in the DMs. Let's get this conversation going. And again, if you haven't listened to part 1 and 2 of this little internet body content series, go back and listen to those. Thank you for tuning in to part 3 of probably 3. If you like these episodes, please share them with a friend. I don't know, press all the buttons. Show me some love. Love you. I'll talk to you soon.